Satnam and welcome. Welcome to the Sovereign Sisterhood Movement podcast, where we empower women to reclaim their sovereignty by healing and transforming their lives and lineage. Our mission is to disrupt ancestral karmic patterns of emotional pain, holistically combining both a scientific and a spiritual approach. Today, our guest is Margie Breault, who will be sharing with us her wisdom, insights, and all of her experiences as it relates to the journey of healing. Hi, Margie. How are you today?
I'm doing so wonderful. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you. And thank you so much for being here. When I read your bio, I was like so interested in talking with you because a lot of the things that you shared, not only are you helping women or your clients with this, but also like you literally transcended them. You're like what I call the best teachers out there because you actually had to do your own healing journey in order to do the work you do today. So
Uh,
thank you for being here. So I'd like to start first with talking about what is your work comprised of? I know there was a lot of different healing modalities that you were talking about. So what exactly do you focus on?
yeah, so I encompass it and call myself an energy medicine practitioner, flow coach, and medium. So all of that is a combination of many healing modalities, and it's really all wrapped up back into ancient Aboriginal, ancient ways that people lived in unison with the earth. So when I talk about mediumship and working with my psychic gifts, I really mean that I'm using the ancient art of channeling, which is not just talking to spirit in one stream of consciousness, but it's being able to connect in to all streams of consciousness, whether it's connecting in with the essence of the wind, or connecting in with the star nations and the sky people, or connecting in with the energy of the earth and being able to receive messages from many streams of consciousness through that natural path. And then again, bringing it all into those ancient teachings, which really all follow natural law, which are scientific and spiritual.
Oh, absolutely beautiful. So what exactly, because it doesn't sound like it's something that you would learn in college or university. So what led you to this type of work? Is it something that you've been interested in since you were a child, or how did you get into this?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. So, my childhood was marked by a lot of separation from self and a lot of projections that were placed on me, and a lot of agreements that were made that didn't know as a child that I didn't have to make. So something that one, I'm very excited that I get to teach my children that they don't need to agree with anything that limits them. But as a kid, things that would happen would be like my mother had a hard time taking accountability. So if I called her out on a lie, or maybe my feelings upset her, I would be forced to look in the mirror and tell myself I was a liar. So there are lots of narratives like that that really pulled me and separated me and disassociated me from who I truly was. And that started at a really young age, with a lot of physical, emotional, psychological, and sexual abuse that followed in my young adult and teen years. And so when I got into early adulthood, so like 18, 19, early 20s, I just was riddled with disassociation and really had no idea how to identify my emotions. I didn't know how to connect with myself. I didn't even know who I was. I was very lost, um, because a lot of bully energy seemed to be pulled towards me in my like my younger years, like 10, 11, 12, and even in high school. I really went into people pleaser and victim mentality roles. So I would often go into positive projection. So I would not want to deal with all that heavy and dense stuff because I didn't want to be a cause and source of suffering. That's another agreement that I had made, that I caused other people suffering. So I went into positive projection. So I didn't share any of that heavy and dense stuff because I couldn't even identify it myself. Or even know what I was feeling or thinking, or who I was underneath all of that, because I agreed to that suffering as being who I was and not just an experience I was having. And so in my early 20s, someone introduced me to Reiki for the first time. It was a close friend of mine. And in the experiences that I would go and have Reiki done on me, it felt like amazing. Like I felt lighter, I felt freer. All of those things that I was doing outside, all those agreements felt like they weren't there in those moments. But those Reiki sessions weren't really teaching me tools to actually manage it when I went back out into the world, right? Like it was like a passive healing experience. And so all those limitations and those obstacles would prevail, because I'd go back into the world and I'd feel really great, but then I wouldn't know how to connect with myself. I still didn't understand all the limitations I was operating under. Still didn't understand all of the things that I was agreeing to, that were projections that were placed onto me. I really just thought this is who I was. And so a friend of mine, a babysitter I actually used to have as a kid, was like, I think that learning about these modalities and learning the theories behind them will actually help you, because it will help you go deeper with the knowledge and the wisdom behind it, and allow you to connect deeper with yourself. And so that's when I started to really understand myself more deeply, because I was able to be in a consistent state of practice. Like I was always learning and then embodying, learning and then embodying. And so I went from learning Reiki to Reiki Master 2 to Reiki 2 to Reiki Master Teacher. And then I went on to learn about shamanism and herbology and aromatherapy, and doing the things that we do when we're seeking wisdom. So taking all sorts of classes and watching podcasts and buying books upon books and learning about oracle cards and tarot. And my old babysitter had been learning with the academy that I now train with and teach with now. It's called the Swaha Yoga and Synergy of Sound Academy. And she was like, hey, I've been training with these two women. I've been training with Lisa Ashwari Murphy, the founder, and I really think that you would like this community and these classes. And so I went and started learning about natural law, and that is really where my whole life changed. Like I thought that I was healing already. I was already practicing Reiki. I was doing all these modalities with others. But this is when like my transformation, truly, I feel rooted in that transformation. And when I started learning about natural law, the first law that really like put me in was the law of polarity, because I learned that everything has a built-in duality. So as this person who lived in positive projection, I realized that like, what do you mean? True power is not like being separate. It's actually like being in both, and understanding that there's both and having balance in both. I was like mind blown. I was like, oh my goodness, I don't need to, try to live in this unsustainable energy and then crash, because it's not realistic to be high vibing all the time. Like, that's amazing. You mean I don't have to have a high pitched voice and uproot with every big emotion, because I can stay really rooted and balanced in an awareness that emotions are just energy? And so with that, I decided with that moment, and that truly ignited me, that I needed to stay on the path of learning from that ancient way, from that Aboriginal way, because natural law is really how ancient indigenous tribes and still how indigenous people work today in unison with nature. And so that gets really, people have separated ourselves from that. We live in a superficial culture. And so it's bringing all of that back into natural. And again, not just like, uh, you know, the birds and the bees and the butterflies. It's also like the stars in the sky and the planets and the sun and the heartbeat of the earth and the ocean and the mountains, and really bringing it all into that natural way and moving through the law of divine oneness and the principle of ahimsa, where we're understanding that we're all connected and that our first intention is to do no harm. And so really working in that way is where I came to where I am right now.
Wow, absolutely amazing and so inspiring and beautiful that you didn't give up and then you continued that search till you aligned with these beautiful modalities that now are part of your life. So inspiring. I have so many questions, especially about natural law and polarity. But before we talk about that, I want to take you back to what you said about disassociation and
Mm-hmm.
also agreements. I love that you use that word. So a lot of women, people in general that have gone through trauma, like you described, and especially this generational trauma, which I kind of want to ask you too, if you believe yours was also generational. They go into these states of disassociation and they don't even know they're under these states of disassociation. So can you describe to us what disassociation is, and also what do you mean by agreements?
Yeah, those are wonderful questions. So when I'm talking about, we'll tackle agreements first. When I'm talking about agreements, I mean, so for example, when I was being forced to make myself in the mirror tell myself I was a liar, right? At some point, I was told that, and told myself that so many times because I was forced to. that I agreed that I was a liar. And so those beliefs, that was a cause, the effect took me to action because I believed it, and it was a projection that was put onto me through generational trauma, and through the things that my mom hadn't healed from at the time, and the belief systems that she had. That's something that belief took me to action. So when we're thinking about belief systems, we're thinking about things that maybe society has placed on us, maybe our family has placed on us, maybe our peers have placed on us, maybe our teachers have placed on us, that we didn't realize we didn't have to agree to.
Yeah.
So for example, you're so smart, you should be a doctor, right? Then you agree that you should be a doctor, right? Maybe you don't even want to be a doctor, but you think that you have to be because you've now made this agreement that you should be a doctor. Or maybe it's that you think you're a liar, or maybe you think that the only way to get love is to share your body, or maybe you agree that, you're never going to amount to anything and you're not worthy. These are all agreements that we make. And so how I start to work with people and get them to understand those limiting beliefs is I tell them that me personally, I do not agree with a belief system that limits me. So if I start to feel limited by a belief I'm holding, I know that that's not the truth. So a belief system that limits you is not the truth. If it's limiting, you need to break agreement with it. Cancel, delete. We're not agreeing with that anymore. We're going to find a new way of life.
Yeah.
So the belief systems that typically people generally have, which is pretty like universal, it's better to give than receive, right? I think that every person I've ever worked with has had that as a belief system. And, grandmothers today still say that. And bringing that into the law of compensation, or the law of giving and receiving, which is one of the universal laws, in that there is that golden rule of to freely give, right? But we freely give to freely receive, but in our giving, we're considering ourselves. So if that's also about being able to place healthy boundaries. It's not selfish to say I can't, and it's not selfish to also consider yourself in your giving, and it's also not selfish to receive. So in anything that I'm giving freely, but I'm also open to freely receiving in all things. And that doesn't necessarily have to come from a direct compensation from the person I'm doing an exchange with. It can come from a universal exchange. But also when I'm doing work, whether it's with a client or it's in a group, any energy, any healing that I'm giving out, I'm also like, if someone in this room needs this, then I need it too.
Yeah.
So as they're receiving, I'm also receiving. So I'm always open to that receiving energy. So those are some of the ways that you can start to break down those limiting beliefs and break down those agreements that we've made. And so again, anything that limits you is not the truth. So as you're starting to recognize your own belief systems, start to be aware of, is that limiting? Is that limiting me? Another one that people generally have is when it comes to like meditation, right? They think that the only way to meditate is like on a yoga mat and in silence. And so that stops people from meditating. Well, that's very limiting if we think that's the only way to meditate, right? That, and you think that you need to meditate for 45 minutes, right? That's also not the truth. There are so many ways to meditate. It's all about the intention that you're holding, right? You can go for a walk and that can be a meditative experience. You can ride a bike and it can be a meditative experience. It can be for 5 minutes. It can be for 3 minutes. It can be for 10 minutes. It can also be for 45 minutes if you want it to be. My whole thing about what that meditative moment looks like is that you're bringing in rhythm and you're bringing in intention. Through the law of rhythm, we know that the highest core, like everything has a natural rhythm. And if we're connecting in with a rhythm such as the heartbeat of the earth or the Schumann resonance, then we're aligning with something that is based in nature. We're aligning with something that is giving off an electromagnetic pulse. So if we're aligning with that pulse, we're aligning with that rhythm, then we are aligning with a high coordinate frequency and not a discordant frequency. So I like to play rhythmic music if I'm not going to be doing a meditation. I like to do mantra. I like to do breath work, but there's typically, even right now as we're talking, I have a rhythmic playlist playing in the background, just to make sure that I'm staying in rhythm as we're talking and that I have that support with me. And if I don't have music, it's like bringing that rhythm to my breath, bringing that rhythm to my heartbeat. and then intentionally aligning with it. And so again, that's another way you can start to think about what is actually those agreements that you've made. What was that second question that you asked me, so I can go back to that too?
Yeah, no, that was a beautiful explanation. So it's correlated to that because then a lot of people that experience trauma and generational trauma, especially, they also go through disassociation. So how can you explain disassociation? Because I believe that because we're so dissociated because of trauma, we make these agreements unconsciously and unknowingly. So what is dissociation and how do the two work together?
Yeah, so a lot of the time we are making the agreements because we didn't know we didn't have to, and
Okay.
two, because we have been so pulled apart and separated from who we truly are, and who we truly are is centered in the heart. And so often we think that our experiences are who we are, our suffering is who we are. Those stories that have been created because of those limiting beliefs and those obstacles and those patterns and the projections that have been placed on us through generational trauma, through trauma that we've experienced in our own lifetimes, and even through timelines, because we have multiple timelines and multiple journeys in our soul that our souls experience. And so when we are not coming back into that place of compassion, and so in my belief system, compassion is not to suffer with, compassion is the liberation of suffering. So it's putting that love into action and allowing you to liberate with compassion and not to suffer with. And so if you're coming back into that compassionate witness, that soul's witness, and not agreeing with the emotion or not agreeing with the story that might come with the emotion, you're observing from this place of compassion, non-judgment. That's not heavy or dense. You don't feel shame or blame. There's no shame or blame and accountability. Then you can start to become aware of where in your life you're disassociated and how you've disassociated. So typical ways that people are disassociating is they're not allowing themselves to actually feel their emotions. So that happens a lot when people put this is a bad emotion and this is a good emotion, or this is positive emotion and this is a negative emotion, right? A lot of times we're like, oh, anger is a bad emotion or it's negative, right? It's actually just an emotion. It's not positive or negative. It's just energy. And so it can be heavy and it can be light, but if us saying heavy and light, is dependent upon whether or not we're holding on to the emotion or if we're letting it process.
Oh,
And so, yeah, so a lot of the times when people aren't, they're not letting themselves feel the emotion, they go into the stories that come with it. They go into, all of the shame, the blame, the guilt, the fear. They're actually disassociating from who they really are. And then they're going into all these stories,
yeah.
which is something that I used to do all the time. And sometimes it still happens. And I realize I'm in a story and I've got to get curious about it from that place of compassion. And so I also used to disassociate with alcohol. Like in the beginning, before I really started on the healing journey, like I was in a bar from Thursday to Sunday. Like that's where
Yeah.
you could find me. And if I wasn't in a bar, I was probably working, because I worked 3 and sometimes 4 jobs just so I could stay consistently busy, so that I didn't have to focus on the things in my body that were causing me pain. And I didn't have to focus on the emotions that were hurt because I was just too busy. How could I focus on any of that? And so people disassociate in a lot of ways, but those are 2 really common ones.
Yeah.
Using substances to dissociate and not actually allowing themselves to feel their feelings. And so in our world, we give a lot of glamour and a lot of like ways that you can like put a band-aid on the problem and think that you are, doing self-care, you're doing this or that, but it's not actually getting to the root and allowing you to get curious about what's going on in your field. You're not really getting curious about those limiting beliefs. You're not really getting curious about the reasons why you're disassociating. You're not really getting curious about why you've acted a certain way, so that you can free yourself from that. Because to free it, we have to see it. If we're not aware that we're operating in a way, we can't actually then shift that way of operating. So I think that comes with, again, not just generational trauma, which is certainly huge and definitely huge on my journey, but it comes with, again, those belief systems that we've agreed to. And typically they're unconsciously,
Right.
again, because we had no idea we didn't have to.
Right. Yeah, this is exactly why I wanted you to talk about this because again, especially if you've been through trauma, you've never been on the healing journey or you've never done any type of healing work, shadow work, you don't know what you don't know. You cannot
Right.
change what you're not aware of. And disassociation is so common because it's so uncomfortable for us to be in our bodies when we've have experienced trauma, which takes us to this next question I wanted to ask you about polarity. And you said something very brilliant and beautiful about emotions. And to me, emotions are the language of our ancestors. These basically repressed energetic frequencies that they could not feel to heal. Now, you said that there wasn't any negative or positive emotions, more like heavy and light based on how you're holding them. You also said, you talked about polarity and about how you understood that all emotions basically served a purpose and they were there for a reason. You know, some of the things, I don't know if you recently heard that Terrence Howard podcast episode with Joe Rogan. Have you listened to that?
I've heard about it. I have not listened to it.
So he's talking a lot about energy, right, and frequency, and basically how, and in the Kundalini Yoga teachings as a therapist, that's what we are here to do, to transmute emotion, right? To not see it as negative or positive. So how do you see emotion as it relates to polarity? And can you explain to us what polarity means to you and how working with emotions in the polarity, how does that help you heal?
Yeah, that's great. That's a great, I love these questions. You're asking such a great question. So the law of polarity is really, and we'll take it down to like the most basic level that the way I like to explain it is, so or think about the law of polarity is everything in the world is made up of atoms. Everything. Everything from the earth here all the way to the stars and the sky and the planet above and the planets above. Like everything is made from atoms. We're made from atoms, the trees are made from atoms, everything is derived from that place of oneness, which is made of atoms, the web of light,
Mhm.
that quantum field. And so if you think of an atom doesn't just have positive or negative ions on it, right? To actually be functioning and to be balanced, the atom needs to have an equal amount of protons and neutrons on it. And if everything in nature, above and below, is created from those atoms, that is true for everything that exists in nature. We have to have positive and negative to exist. You have to, if there's not an up, there can't be a down. The pendulum can't swing left if there's no right to swing back to. There would be no direction. And so true balance and true power rests in sitting the awareness of both and being able to stay on the surfboard, so to speak, no matter where the ebb and flow is happening in life, that equanimity, staying balanced time over time. And so that's a practice, right? Equanimity is a practice. And you know, if we're talking about Buddhist perfection, because it's never going to be 100%, it's 80% of the time we're experiencing that equanimity. Pain, criticism, and praise is not swaying us 80% of the time, right? If I can be like Buddha, that's great. I'm probably like 65, 70. But we're not quite 80. And maybe I won't get there before this body drops, but that's okay. And so if you're thinking about how everything has that built into it in duality, right? Everything has the built-in duality. And we're looking to live in a non-duality world, right? I don't want to be separate. I want to be whole. So we have to accept life in its wholeness. We have to accept us and our wholeness. And when we're experiencing emotion, because we label it positive, negative, good, bad, there's like this resistance to actually experience the emotion. Because the emotion comes in and the emotion triggers a story. It triggers fear, it triggers judgment, it triggers shame, it triggers blame, because that's what we've been taught in our world, because negatives are good or bad or blah, 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 and all these things that we've agreed to unconsciously, because we're operating as the brain is in the driver's seat. But that's not the truth. Our heart is in the driver's seat. We need to give our brain a job to listen to our heart and not the other way around.
Right.
And so when we're talking about law and polarity, we're talking about emotions, knowing that no emotion is good or bad. Emotions are just energy and motion. They're just energy. And they're give us an awareness, right? If we're angry, it's an awareness of why are we angry? What is that what is that triggering for us? And then being able to observe that from that place of compassion, not judging it, not shaming it, not blaming it, and then being able to set a boundary from that place. Not projecting the emotion, not creating more anger or creating more pain, It's practicing the pause so that we can be aware and not go into the story. Because when you go into the story, you're getting taken out of that place of resting in the I and then being thrown around in the tornado.
Absolutely, 1,000%. And I think that is so important for people to understand, because I think, like you said, people want to be like, oh, I always have to be in gratitude. I always have to be happy. And I think what you're also saying is, and I don't know if you would agree with me, it's not the for example, we know that anger causes cancer, or certain emotions cause certain physical illnesses, but it's not the emotion, it's the fact that we identified with that emotion and then stayed in the emotion. Is that kind of
Yeah.
what you're saying?
Yeah, when we hold on to the emotion because we've gone into separation, we've gone into those stories, those judgments,
Right.
and we've agreed with it, right?
There.
Then that's when it starts to do things to ourselves. That's when it starts to do things to our DNA, is because those are discordant frequencies, right? If we just allowed it with no judgment to flow, just like a river flows, just like the ocean flows, just like the rhythm of the moon or the rhythm of the planet spinning, if we just allowed it to flow with that rhythm instead of holding on to it or judging it
Yeah.
and taking accountability for our feelings, like it's okay to feel that. Like it's okay that you get mad sometimes. It's okay that you're sad. Grief is okay to feel. It's okay to experience it. But the moment we're going into judgment of we can't feel it, or this makes us bad, or even if we're going into those places of like, we have to meditate today, we have to be in those places of gratitude today, we need to check all these boxes, we have to do that. You're already putting in yourself in a place of separation,
Absolutely.
because you're already putting yourself in a place of judgment and perfectionism, which like that you're already not in flow, you're already not rooted if you're operating from that place, which is okay. It's just an awareness. When
Right.
I notice I'm uprooted, when I've noticed that I've gone into that separation, the difference between what I used to do and what I do now is that I used to shame and blame myself.
Yes.
I used to get mad at myself, like, oh, you're high vibe. You're doing all these things. You should know better. It's not that I should know better. I'm still a human being having a human experience. And
Thank
it
you.
took years and years and years and years and generations before me, because of all the generational trauma that I'm healing, for all of these patterns and these obstacles to be created in my DNA and in my field. It takes practice
Totally.
to completely not operate inside of that anymore. And it's not who I am, it's something I'm experiencing. So not identifying yourself as the obstacle or identifying yourself as the pain and suffering and the limitation.
Yeah,
Because I'm not the limitation. I'm not the suffering. It's just an experience.
love that.
So it's all in how we are moving from that place of judgment and moving from that place of shame and blame being a way of life
Right.
to allowing kindness and compassionateness in our accountability. Like I don't want shame and blame and guilt in my accountability. That's very limiting. That doesn't allow me to do a lot.
Right.
But having kindness and compassion in my accountability, that allows me to move mountains.
Beautiful and so brilliant. And I think it's so necessary to say, because also we have this kind of like new age jambalaya of you're attracting everything. So sometimes when people get sick, now they're again feeling guilty. I had a friend in my class recently in Kundalini Yoga Therapy, where she was a vegan and she practiced yoga, did meditation, and then she ended up getting cancer. And she was so angry and so upset and mad at God and doing all these things. I was doing the right things. I think a lot of us obviously can correlate that to childhood trauma, generational trauma, or maybe our lifestyle. But there is the mysterious, auspicious aspect of the creator and God. And sometimes you don't know what karma lesson is being served to you. And I think the 99% of the healing journey is acceptance. So if you're constantly trying to like belittle yourself or say, look at what went wrong, or like society says it's like not okay to not be okay, then we're never going to be able to progress and move forward. So that's why I really appreciate you explaining to us what polarity means and why having emotions is not a bad thing.
Well, and the thing with manifestation, which is like, it definitely new age spirituality has like blown that up, but they take away all of the other natural laws that go with it. And part of manifestation is taking aligned action,
Yeah.
right? You can't actually manifest something without taking aligned action. Now, we're constantly manifesting in our lives. We just don't always realize it, because when you're in that place of separation, of fear, of judgment, of doubt, you don't want to take accountability for the fact that your actions are aligning with those limiting beliefs that you're holding, right? You don't realize that you are actually creating that, because you are aligning the way that you're moving through the world with those belief systems. If you come into really manifestation and attraction, you know that that also takes the law of vibration and understanding where you are vibrationally. Like, are you heavy and dense, or are you light and free? Because you're going to attract the things from a light and free place a lot easier. And you're going to have those inspired thoughts that allow you to have that intentional action, which aligns you with the manifestations. It shows the universe that you're actually ready for them. But if you pull that intentional action out, if there's no action, you can't manifest just from thought, pure thought.
Yeah.
Right? You have to have action.
Yes. Yes.
Because that what makes us accountable to it, right? Our thoughts and our beliefs have a cause and effect on how we feel about ourselves and where we are vibrationally and how we're showing up in the world and how the world is experiencing us. But without that aligned action, we're not actually manifesting anything. Again, people so often operate and manifest from that place of separation, so they don't realize that they are aligning their actions with fear, with doubt, with judgment, with criticism, with shame, with all these limiting beliefs that they hold. But when you're taking in all of the natural laws, it's law of attraction, law of attention, law of rhythm, law of vibration, law of cause and effect, law of inspired action. Like, it's all of them working together, and understanding that allows you to just like co-create with the universe in such a beautiful way.
Yeah, so beautiful. Yeah, it's bringing the spiritual to the physical and learning
Yeah.
to do that. So now along those lines, you mentioned all of these different laws. So can you help us understand actually natural law? What does that mean? How does it show up in your work? And yeah, let's start there. What is natural law? Oh, and channeling. I want to ask you about channeling too. So
Yeah.
is that connected, or how do they work?
So natural law is connected through all of my work. So I am trained in a lot of modalities. And so I'm trained in energy medicine. I'm trained in the ancient art of channeling. I'm trained in meditation. I'm trained in sound. I'm trained in God knows what else. I don't need to name all my accolades, but I'm trained in a lot of things. But the basis of all of it is natural law. It's bringing it all back into that natural place and that place of homeostasis, that place of rhythm and connection with the earth. And so natural law is Bonpo, pre-religion. So like truly before any religion was here to dilute what natural law is, how ancient and Aboriginal beings lived in unison with the earth. And scientifically, a lot of these laws exist in science because it's how organic matter works. Works. And so it's also how we work. And so all of that is how ancient peoples, the Atlanteans, the Lumerians, the Star People, the Sky Nations, the ancient Egyptians, the ancient Greeks, like all of those nations, the ancient peoples who lived with oracles and had the healers in their tribes and the shamans and worked that way, and even tribes who still operate that way now,
Yeah.
right? They're operating within that natural law. And something so incredible that my teacher and my mentor recently said was that the reason why Indigenous people get mad at white people is because they're teaching some of these ideas. They're teaching some of these ideas, but they're not living them. So they're diluting the actual ancient practices that they live their life by. So how you can really honor how what those natural laws are is not just talking about them and learning about them, but it's embodying them and living your life that way, which is something I strive to do. So that everything that I'm talking about is not some foreign concept that like it's a theory that I just learned about in a class. It's truly how I aspire and intend to live my life. I bring all of that through intentionally. So that's why I can talk about it and talk about experiences in which I've had in my own life that correlate to the laws and how they show up differently in my life, because I am not just learning about them through a book or taking a class. I am intentionally living them and bringing them through everything that I do. I bring them into my energy medicine work. I bring them into the leadership work that I do within the city that I work in. I bring them into my home and my family. I bring them in through the practices that I do for myself every single day. There's not a day, or I try to not have a day where there's not practices woven in through my day to keep me in flow and keep me in balance, because it's a practice. It's not something that you just wake up every day and you're like, okay, I'm grounded, I'm in flow, and I don't have to do any inspired action to align with that. It's practices, right? It's breath work, it's mantra, it's meditation, it's rhythmically moving my body, it's laughing, it's gratitude, it's all these different practices multiple times a day. And again, not those long drawn out 45 minutes, but like just a couple minutes. When I know I'm going to be going into a place that's chaotic, I might do Om Vajrakila Om Pat as a mantra so I can organize the energy. If I know that there's going to, that I'm, I might be experiencing something heavy or dense, or I do something and I'm experiencing something heavy or dense, it's holding the connections prayer, which is, I am the authority of my body, mind, and spirit, connected and protected by this highest light. This light is governed by all the laws of the universe, and this light governs me. It holds the light of 100,000 suns and moves with the heartbeat of the earth. Anyone or anything that has violated my right to free will, I hold you accountable in the highest voltage of liquid love. May all beings be happy. May all beings be free. Feet outside the circle, unify to the light, and return to the dimension in which it came. I can hold that for myself, whether I need to say it out loud or just say it quietly to myself. I can do that in the car. I can do that when I'm, walking down the street. I could do that anywhere. So there's all these practices as you weave into your day to keep you grounded. Whatever that looks like is individualized to the person who's experiencing it. And so when we're working in that way, when we're embodying all of that, we're really just experiencing life differently, and we're showing up authentically through the living action of that, what we're doing. So that is what natural law is, and that's how you experience it through doing the work. It's through actually doing the work and understanding the laws and how you work inside of them and how you can use them to work for you. And then when you're thinking about the ancient art of channeling, the ancient art of channeling is bringing it back to the original oracles, the oracles of Delphi. The earth is the first original oracle, and bringing it back into using the earth to connect in with those streams of consciousness. So it's not just connecting in with formless energy that is dropped. So it's not just connecting in with spirit from people who have passed away. It's being able to connect in with the energy of the mountain. It's being able to connect in with the energy of the ocean. It's being able to connect in with the star people and the sky nations. It's being able to connect in with the bees and the dogs and the cats and the dolphins and the whales. Being able to connect in with that energy and read information from it, gather information from that energy field, from that stream of consciousness. It's not limited to one stream. It's all of those streams. If we think about our nadis, right? That's a yoga, one of the parts of yoga. Like, we have 72,000 streams of energy that move through us. I'd never want to be cut to just one. I don't want to just be able to read from one stream of energy. And so when we're taking that back into ancient Aboriginal ways and bringing it into the ways that the ancient oracles worked, they could connect in with all of that. Like, you can connect in and gather information from that beautiful amethyst crystal that's behind you, right? Like, you can do a journey with that crystal and get information for what that specific crystal has for you as an individual. What is the healing that that crystal has for you? What is the information that's going to unlock in yourself? And guess what? It's going to be different for you than it is for me. And so knowing that we can connect into all of these different things through rhythm, through these ancient practices, through intention, is beautiful.
Yeah, you nailed it. That's so beautiful, because I think a lot of people are so like in the box about channeling. They think it can only be done like through tarot cards, which I love tarot and I practice tarot, but there's, like you said, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. Everything's always speaking to you, and you can get messages from like the crystal and everything that's around you.
And the cool thing is, it comes in many forms, right? Like, I'm working on mastering all of the forms of clairvoyancy, but my strongest is scent. So when I'm getting a message, the first thing I get is scent. And then I have to ask for more information. I have to say, great, okay, I'm smelling cedar. Give me more information. okay, great, I'm smelling shoe leather. I need more information in a different way because I don't know any, like, what is shoe leather going to give me? I need a felt sense. I need audible. I need visual. I need other things to help me distinguish what that smell is coming from. And so sometimes the scents are really cool and sometimes they're not so cool. Sometimes I'm like, I really wish I didn't smell that. But the cool thing about working with energy and having free will is that I can also say, I don't want to receive that message right now. Or I can say, I need to receive the message in a different way. Thanks for the information. I need to receive the message in a different way. So when you're intentionally connecting in with those streams of consciousness and you're open to all those streams of consciousness, the more you work in it, the more you can expand all of those different ways of connection, right? Because I used to just be able to smell really strongly, but now I can hear really strongly. Now I can feel really strongly. Now I can see, and not with my eyes, but my third eye. Like now I can see really strongly. I have experiences. It's not just one thing, it's multiple things. And so that's another practice. If you want to practice being able to connect into the stream and being able to activate your centers of clairvoyancy, that's a practice of doing with intention.
Wow, so powerful. That is amazing. So you do this for yourself. So what does it actually look like? Like if a client wanted to work with you? Do you do like group coaching? Do you do one-on-one session? And what do you do in a session or what happens?
So I do one-on-one and group. And then I also, facilitate sound and meditation. So typically, I do two different types of sessions. So I do energy for life coaching with a focus on flow and manifestation. And then I also do transformational energy sessions. Honestly, within both of those sessions, whether I'm doing group or I'm doing one-on-one, all of these modalities are woven in. And I don't pre-plan what a session is going to look like. It's not like a prescribed thing. I'm going in with rhythm and I'm always playing my drum in the beginning of a session and I'm feeling the energy. I'm communicating with the energy field. I'm also listening to what the people are saying and bringing them into rhythm. I'm inviting their energy to come into balance, to come to the highest coherent frequency, to come into that rhythm. I'm inviting that and then finding out what the intention is, so when I do group work, right, it's like I typically will do a short meditation and then I ask everybody, what did you come here for today? What did you come to talk about today? After we do a meditation. And then from that, I pull the common thread and that's what we work on.
That's beautiful.
And sometimes it's the same and sometimes it's different.
Yeah.
Sometimes we work on the same thing for, 3 sessions and sometimes it's completely different. And sometimes the common thread is more an energy that they're all holding versus like what their actual intention of coming in is about. So like maybe the common thread is fear. Their intention might not be like, I want to talk about fear today, but what I'm hearing from their intention is fear-based. Maybe it's judgment. Maybe it's shame as blame as a way of life. So I'm speaking to all of that. When I'm working one-on-one with a client, it's the same thing. I'm bringing in sound, I'm bringing in Reiki, I'm bringing in energy medicine, I'm bringing in crystal work, I'm bringing in the ancient art of channeling, I'm bringing in all of it. Now I can do more like specialized sessions, so I can do like past life regression. I can do like, connecting in and getting messages and receiving messages. I don't get messages every time. I'm always calling in ancestors. I'm always calling in healing allies. Sometimes I call in angels. Sometimes I call in Ganesh. Sometimes I call in Kuan Yin. Sometimes I'm calling in Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene. It really depends on the energy of who I'm working with, and what's resonant to their field. And if there's multiple people, I'm calling in everybody. I'm calling in all the things. I'm calling in, ancient drummers who stood around the ceremonial flames, and I'm calling in thousands of legions of angels. So I'm calling in all of it. And so it's really all about not trying to like create the session and align it beforehand. Even when I'm doing sound and meditation, that is done in the moment. That is done with I have a formula that I follow. I know what I'm going to be covering in those sessions, but it's not like I none of my meditations are written. None of them are something that I decide what instruments I'm playing in what order. It's all about the energy that's in the room.
I love it. I love it. It's so important because you have to really meet them where they are energetically, and that takes a lot of intuition. And it can absolutely be done in a group setting, like you described. It's about what is the room going to be filled with what energy, so that then I can provide that that opposite polarity to get it to transmute. Really, if you think about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful.
And it's also like being able to have euphoric trust of the wisdom that I'm holding, and that everything's always going to be met from that stream of consciousness as long as I'm trusting and aligning my intention to connect in with that energy.
Yes. Well, I can definitely tell you embody it, and you speak from a place of experience, not from a YouTube video or something of that nature. So I want to ask you, this will probably be our last question since we're running out of time, but I want to take it back to ancestral healing and to generational healing. And I know that you have personal experience with that, but would you let us know, our audience know, what your opinion is on that? What do you see generational healing as? And ancestral, do you see a difference between a generational and ancestral? Do you see it the same? And do you think it's something that as a human being that we need to engage in order to heal ourselves?
I think the moment that you come on the healing journey, whether you have the intention to start doing work on the generational or ancestral healing path, you already are.
Love it.
Because a lot of the trauma that we're holding, a lot of the karma that we're holding, isn't just because it was created in our timeline, right?
Sure.
It's because it's been held through generations of all the women before of us, all the men before us, our grandmothers, our grandfathers, our cousins, our uncles, our aunties, and all of those who have lived before us, who have been oppressed upon, who have had those projections upon. Because some of the limitations that we agree to are because it's been passed down generation to generation to generation to generation, and no one ever healed it. And so now we're the people who come and they're like, we're healing it. We're not passing that down anymore. We're no longer living in that cycle anymore. Whether you intend to or not, you're already doing that generational healing.
Yeah.
And when I'm doing a session, I'm inviting ancestors and the generational lineage to come in and get that healing too.
So beautiful.
So like when I'm in a session, whether it's meditation or I'm doing, transformational energy session or energy for life coaching, when I'm bringing in that rhythm, when I'm bringing in the bioscalar meditation, when I'm bringing in that, I am asking all of our ancestors and the generations before us to come in and receive this information, receive this healing. So it's a lineage effect. And so I think that generational and ancestral are pretty much the same.
Yeah.
And whether or not it was your intention coming on your healing journey or not, it's that generational healing is coming too.
Yeah.
Um, and so that is a practice that I think is so beautiful that we get to do in the world. Like we get to allow that generational trauma to stop, and we get to choose that because we have the free will to choose that, and so that's pretty cool.
Yes, I believe our ancestors choose all of us, but we have to choose ourselves. And like you said, as long as you're doing the healing journey, you're already participating. So that is absolutely brilliant. Wow, I could talk to you for hours. There's so many questions that popping in my head, but I know we're running out of time here. I do want to ask you though, where can the audience find you if they wanted to book a healing session or a session in general? What are I'll put the handles below, of course, in our description, but let us know, where can we find you?
Yeah, so that anyone can find me through my website, www.prismofbrilliance.biz. I thought the biz was cool, so I have a .biz instead of a .com. I am on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, all as Prism of Brilliance. I don't use TikTok as much, although maybe one day I'll do more videos. And all of my contact information is available on my website. You can reach me by phone or by email. And then outside of being able to contact me, if you're looking into taking some of the classes that I've talked about and getting some of the wisdom from the people that I learn with and grow with now, you can connect with the Swaha Yoga and Synergy of Sound Academy. That's where my mentors are out of. That's where I do a lot of my classes and a lot of my teaching with. And then I also have 2 workbooks that are available that weave natural law up on Amazon. So I have a natural law workbook that I created to go along with a natural law workshop series that I did, but also you can do it as a standalone. If you there's a book that goes with it. It's called The Whole Elephant Revealed. It's really breaking down the science and the spirituality behind the natural laws. It's by Maria de Vieras. And then I also have a 12-month flow coaching workbook, which breaks down a lot of practices and then also breaks down each month by a law. So if you're looking to get started, but you're not quite ready to book a call or have a healing session, you can start doing it that way too.
Oh, wonderful. I'll make sure to put all of those links below in the description. Oh my gosh, it's been an honor. You speak my language. So I feel lighter just talking to you, Margie. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Any last words before we close for today?
Just a reminder, a belief system that limits you is not the truth. So I leave you with that. Thank you, Jody, so much for having me on the show today. It has been a pleasure, an honor in and in itself to create this space as you hold the space for me to share some of my wisdom and for me to be able to connect in with your energy. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Right back at you, Margie. And thank you all for joining us today on the Sovereign Sisterhood Movement podcast. We hope that today's episode has inspired you and empowered you on your own personal path to reclaiming your sovereignty and healing. Don't forget to like, don't forget to share and subscribe. Until the next episode, we will see you soon. Sat Nam.